Hello, I'm Andrew Little and I'm creator of Little Todos. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go through some of the technologies behind Little Todos. Before we sort of dive into the technology, I just wanted to show you the home screen or the product review screen of Little Todos and also just give you a quick look at the web application itself. This will give you a little bit of context as we go into more of the details behind how this was built. This is my first web application, so being that, I really wanted to start with a foundation that was based on some solid coding standards and coding practices rather than just start writing from scratch. To do this, I actually chose to fork a solution out of GitHub, and that solution that I found was a to-do application on the Backbone.js example library, and that really gave me a good starting point or foundation. It also gave me the chance to learn and use Backbone.js, which is a great JavaScript framework for giving model view controller architecture to your application. So this allows me to, instead of writing JavaScript code that's a little more spaghetti-like, I can actually have it well structured and sort of divided into those model view controller layers. I then chose to use CoffeeScript instead of writing in pure JavaScript. And CoffeeScript allows you to write in a little bit more simplistic language, fewer curly braces, fewer semicolons, and then compile it to JavaScript before you deploy it. So there's this extra level of dependency and then compile time step that I actually found was not so great. And therefore, I don't know if I'd use CoffeeScript if I was to do this all over again, although I do like the syntax and the language. Next up, I used Bootstrap from Twitter, which is a great HTML, CSS boilerplate that just kind of gets you started with nice looking buttons, beautiful looking form fields, that sort of thing, without having to style that all yourself. This I really used a lot on the home screen of Little Todos, or sorry, the product review screen, where you see things like this styled button that I didn't have to do myself. Next up, we used Ruby on Rails for the back end. This was great for building out the back end layer, which is a RESTful API. So that RESTful API is what Backbone.js calls into when it needs to get data for Little Todos. The nice thing about this architecture is that that same REST API could then service an iPhone application if I was to build it in the future. In addition to using Rails for the RESTful API, I also use it for my authentication layer. So for things like signing in, logging out, registration, that's all handled through a gem called Devise. So this was allowed me to get an authentication layer in the application without rolling a lot of those authentication rules myself. A big part of any web application, of course, is deployment. So for that, I used Heroku. Heroku is a great polyglot platform which does a whole lot more than Rails these days, but for me, it was a great solution for deploying my Rails applications, and I've used it in the past as well, so I was really comfortable with it. Right now, I'm able to host Little Todos for free. If I run over the 5 megabyte database limit, then I'll actually have to pay, I think, $15 a month, but it's still a small price to pay for all that 24/7 hosting needs and really just that scalability that's just at a click of a button. Looking at Heroku, I found something called Pusher, which allows me to do real-time push notifications into my web applications. So what this allows me to do with Little Todos is if I was to enter a to-do or a task on my iPhone, then I'll actually get that task updated on my web application on my desktop automatically and without hitting refresh. So Pusher allows those real-time updates to flow through with ease. On the reporting side, I'm using New Relic, which is giving me performance monitoring of my web application through Heroku. So it's really got good integration with Heroku and good real-time analytics. And that's on the performance side. Now, if I look at the usage statistics, I'm just using plain old Google Analytics, which does a great job of telling me what my users are doing within the application. So of course, this will be great for making data-driven decisions when it comes time to evolve the product into future releases. So I found all of these technologies really worked quite well together in building out Little Todos. I was able to use them all for free, and the other nice thing is that I think each and every one of them contributed to less code and less time at a keyboard. Of course, you've got to learn each of these technologies in turn, and you also add a dependency each time you bring one of these in. So it's certainly a trade-off that you have to consider. Looking back, I think the only thing I probably would do differently is to eliminate CoffeeScript from my stack, but the rest of the stuff here seems like a pretty good choice. I might also consider getting rid of Bootstrap from Twitter, but only if I was to get a little bit better at styling my CSS and web forms and things like that. So overall, it's been a really good experience, and hopefully some of these technology choices you've also made in your applications, and I'd love to hear feedback. For now, I hope you enjoy Little To-Dos, and thanks for watching.